This is Progress Culture.
Progress Culture is a weekly happening where master drummer Paul F. Murphy and I share live improvised music and impromptu conversations with people from various fields and expertises about community, value, art, science, freedom, and progress for all. We are excited to share it all with you, so have a listen and see what's going on this week on Progress Culture. Now, let's get into the show. But first, let's hear some music. Everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Progress Culture. Paul Murphy and Dominic Fragman here with the director of University of Maryland's Unmanned Aircraft Test Site, the awesome human being, Mr. Matt Scassero. How's it going, man?
Very good, Dominic. Thanks for having me. Paul, good to see you.
All right, welcome. Great to see you.
Yeah, we're glad that you're here. I've been, like I was telling you before, I've been trying to get Matt back on the show since he was here last time, a few months ago. We had a cool conversation. So, also, it's not our practice here to really speak necessarily specifically about what somebody is working on in full detail. And I know we're not allowed to, but am I allowed to say that you were recently accoladed?
It depends for what.
For the major thing that you did.
For the organ delivery?
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually have received a couple of awards. We from the American Helicopter Museum and Education Center in Philadelphia, we got an award for their annual achievement award for our organ delivery drone that we did last year, 2019. And the biggest award probably that we just found out about will be awarded soon. And I'm not allowed to yet.
Cool.
It's under embargo, but it will be announced in a big virtual conference the first week of October.
Awesome.
Humanitarian award. And the best thing for me, the biggest accolade of all, the company that was created out of our research, Mission Go, up in Baltimore, I believe last week flew a kidney and a cornea in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Wow.
Two patients, two medical facilities in Las Vegas, 10-mile flights, just continue to move the research and the use case on and on to the future. So it's been great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats, man.
We continue to be involved with that research too, so it's going well.
That's fantastic.
Thanks.
I'm glad to have people right here. You're a TechPort neighbor, or I guess you have the seniority, I would imagine, as far as like
there's no seniority around here.
Well, I mean, like I was just trying to figure out as far as whose neighbor are we your neighbor first. Or you our neighbor?
We were here first, so we were the catalyst, I guess.
All right,
but yeah,
cool.
It's Tommy and TechPort have taken over that role, I think.
Right on, very cool.
It's been great.
Well, everybody's sort of connected to the University of Maryland.
We are.
Right.
We started off administratively, structurally, but really it's been the alignment, like we were talking earlier, the alignment of ideas and thoughts and getting stuff done. Julia Lenser's favorite phrase. She doesn't use stuff, though. But just getting stuff done so that basing on research and then going with it, running with it.
And are they delivering by drones in all the states at this point?
They're definitely not delivering as a regular matter of course in all the states yet.
Okay.
Medical is being worked on in 3 or 4 different states now, and it's expanding rapidly. I think probably the most advanced medical supplies kind of effort right now is in North Carolina. Merck and the state of North Carolina, a couple other folks have gotten together, and they're actually delivering medical supplies on a campus using drones today. And that's a regular thing.
That's great.
Package deliveries are another area. Amazon, FedEx, I believe UPS, and one other wing all received Part 135 certification from the FAA to begin cargo deliveries. They haven't actually started them yet, but they've now gotten permission to look at doing drone delivery for cargo as a regular matter of business.
Wow.
So I would imagine then they're going to have to work out definite flight routes that you can be on.
It's almost like you've been primed for this. Yeah, actually something that we're doing, they do. That is the big, one of the big hurdles that we need to come across is the flight routes, both for aircraft operations efficiency, but also safety and people and things like that, because there's still a lot of concern about flight over people and certification of systems, things like that. So one of the things we've taken on as a state, and the UAS test site is the lead on it, is we're putting together a project that we just kicked off the feasibility study for called the Chesapeake UAS Route Network. And we're going to have a network, not segregated corridors like some of the states have done, but an actual integrated route network as part of our airspace over the Chesapeake Bay to be able to fly drones someday integrated with manned aircraft. Wow. And not just small drones, but large drones. So we know it's going to be multi-year, multi-phase, got to start somewhere. So we're starting now, and we're going to put it together and see what it turns into. But it's for commercial operations, research, defense with the Navy and the Army up at Aberdeen, So it's getting everybody on board, and that's been the big goal lately.
That's
getting everybody on board.
that's the big goal, I would imagine. Yeah. That's great, though.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Beautiful.
Very cool. It's exciting stuff. You've been involved for a long time. You've been in what I guess I would call, maybe erroneously, but hopefully not, high-level leadership positions and dealing with a lot of different kinds of skill sets and personalities, and whether that would be, what were you, vice commander?
Yep.
At the PAX Naval Station and all the things in between. I know you're involved in a slew of things. And I was wondering, as a person who is involved with lots of people of different skill sets, and typically in spheres that require lots of hard empirical knowledge and skills to be sort of repeated and put into processes and standardized and best practices and this sort of things, I was wondering if the question that I'm going to ask isn't necessarily the right way to ask it, but it's like, do you think that is intuition something that you try to look for in people? Is there a way that you feel like you assess that and look for those people? What do you do with them? Do you believe that intuition can provide these sort of empirical, scientific type
Definitely.
results?
And there's so many different directions I thought you were going to go with imposter syndrome and things, but
I don't even know what that is.
it's alive and well, trust me. The intuition is something you do as a leader, as somebody who works with teams, other folks. You do learn to trust your intuition, but the real science of it and the academia of it is what drives intuition, trying to figure out what is driving my intuition. If you just rely on it, that's good, especially if it's accurate, it's good. But figuring out, why do I feel that way? And that's what I've really tried to do a lot of with my leadership growth and my leadership journey over my life was, why do I feel this way? Why do I interact with that person that way, but this person this way? And taking courses on leadership and going through leadership programs and teaching leadership, I actually learn a lot more when I'm teaching, supposedly, other folks about it than I do when I'm just flat out learning or reading from a book. So understanding what the intuition means to you and how you use it so you don't misuse it, you don't miss cues, and you learn what to look for. And lots of other people have said it, you don't hire skills, you don't hire capabilities, you hire people. So that's what's the critical piece, and that's where fit becomes so important when you're hiring onto a team, is you have an idea what they can do and what they've done, but what can they do? What can they do going forward? Because having somebody that can grow into a bigger role or grow into what you might become as an organization, because your organization may change. So having the people on board that can grow with you and can actually lead you. That's one of the biggest things I've learned is leadership is not about being in charge. It's about getting people together to work on common goals and get stuff done and keep on growing to the future. If you happen to be over it, above it, part of it, in the middle of it, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Right. It's a matter of keeping everybody together and focusing.
And I would imagine that with everybody concentrating, that innovation has to be a big part of the thinking process, especially when, I don't know much about this, but when you were speaking about how the drones will be flying not only just in a pattern or zone, but what they're carrying and the differences of all of that, from whether it be the medical or Amazon to the military, that's all different. So a lot of different people must be having a lot of input, and that's driving the innovation to push forward to really grow the drones probably beyond what the aircraft are doing right now.
Yeah, it's...
unmanned.
Yeah, you're spot on. And there is value in tradition and value in doing things a certain way and procedures and things like that. But especially when you're dealing with new technologies, new use cases, the combination of all those things, new environments, even new social conditions like we're experiencing now.
Right.
Having people that can think about it in a different way the worst phrase or the worst phrase that you can have out there is the way we've always done it, doing things the way we've always done it. That kills innovation. So having people that don't rely on that, that can respect discipline, can respect process when it's necessary, like engineering process has value, value of people, things like that. But being able to look at it in different ways, pull in people with different perspectives, the diversity piece, the inclusion of new ideas, you have to have that. So whether it's as a leader figuring out how to piece all that together, or as the individuals figuring out, I bring this really bizarro way of looking at things, but how am I going to play with everybody else in the sandbox?
Right.
That's really important.
Where do you notice any patterns, or in where you find those kinds of thinkers, or what kind of?
I do in some ways, but I try to avoid patterns.
Sure.
But I do see patterns, and it's really, what else do they do? Because it's really easy, especially when you're looking at resumes and you put out a job and you get all these applications, you get resumes, and I tell people all the time, great, you got to put down what courses you took and maybe your GPA, things like that, but frankly, I don't care. That's what you did. That was maybe an entry bar. Maybe some of our jobs require a certain level of degree. I try to avoid those kind of things myself from my organization. But what I really look at is, what else have you done? How have you used what you learned in a different way? What nonprofits do you work with? What volunteer work do you do? What family situations did you have to work through that really demonstrate I can do stuff, but I can really do stuff when faced with challenge, when given an opportunity.
Sure.
People that stepped into a role that they weren't expecting and then just took it off. I've done that a couple times through my career, and I kind of welcome those opportunities now where people aren't really expecting you to, but they're open to letting you. And I try to do it with my team. I need to do it more, but try to give them opportunities to run with things in maybe a different direction than even I thought. And let's see where it goes. Give them freedom. So that the pattern I look for is a discordancy, a other than kind of aspect. To see
varied.
The varied aspects, the diversity, all those things. What are the different things that I can pull together and just get a little crazy and then make something happen?
It's nice to be in a position where you're the one that's making the decisions about that, I
actually enjoy that. And I've actually, a lot of people think, well, the military don't do any of that kind of stuff. No, it's not true. Some military organizations don't, but a lot of them do. And aviation, I was very fortunate coming up through aviation. Even though we have processes and requirements and policies and everything else, we actually had a fair amount of flexibility, especially during the actual flight operations. We actually had some flexibility to do things the way our mind and our intuition says we should. So we were able to do some things, and a couple times through my career, I was able to make changes that reflected a new reality or a new direction of doing something, and giving that freedom, and having some commanding officers above me that gave us that freedom to just, let's run with this, see where it goes.
Yeah, that's interesting. As I was pointing out that you're in the position of leadership, and it's nice to be able to get to make those decisions to find the people or the entities that fulfill these things that you know that you need, that line up with this, but also like, hey, now I get to take a chance on some stuff and put this together, and the leadership having the mindset that they're going to facilitate that they're okay with that. And you're doing that, and what you're saying is that you had the same. And it's interesting because today on the episode of Wicked Chops Live that we did just before you got here, somebody was asking about developing ideas and technique and whether or not it was necessary to have a teacher or is someone to show you the way in that regard. And the answer that I would have for something like that is it necessary? No. But if you have, in regard to a teacher, someone to show you the way, you're going to be much better off. But if you also have someone that allows you, I don't think that with the music that we're playing and the things, the ideas that we're getting into, I don't think that I would be able to do it the way that I can do it if I did not only someone that was able to show me, like, here's how you can develop it so you can obtain the skills to execute, but to allow you the freedom to develop an idea and take it from nothing, from what might seem like a wreck and something that's not people are able to perceive or comprehend because you are not executing it well enough yet. You need that space too, and to have leaders that allow you. When we first met was for the event for the Naval Air Museum, and the whole event was on sort of similar to this, the mindset of innovation and how it's similar across disciplines. And one of the other people that was tapped before you said, "No, I'm not doing that." Two other people said, in the military, like you said, there's this idea that you don't have this space to do whatever that is, be creative and play outside of the box. And these guys were totally in that thinking, and they wouldn't come talk on the panel. And Matt was like, yeah, we do that. We take risk. It requires a taking of risk. And I think that's where people see, I mean, even with something like what you're speaking about with routing the drones and having parameters on that, because you have to have parameters. What are you going to do when they wreck and they fall out of the sky onto people? Or, I don't know, there's probably a whole host of things that you have to be concerned of that you can't play around with.
It's actually, I think, is our biggest challenge right now, and it's changing. We're in the middle of a massive change right now, and that is the safety and sanctity of the airspace over the United States and the world, but specifically talking about the United States. The United States has the busiest but also the safest airspace in the world, and that's because of the FAA. And obviously the pilots and air controllers and everybody are all part of it. We're all tied, though, by the FAA and the policies and procedures and everything. And that was born out of mishaps, decades of mishaps that happened before the FAA came on board. Just like NATOPS in the Navy was born out of the Navy's experience with mishaps and how many pilots we used to kill every year before we had it. So it was born out of the need to have that. We created this great process, but at times we've kind of become prisoners to it.
Sure.
Which, for the most part, hasn't held us back and has actually supported us moving forward. Like you said, the teachers, the FAA, and the policies and procedures actually helped us, gave us a foundational support to move manned aviation forward to the point where it's incredibly safe, but also incredibly productive. You can take risks in really good ways. But now with unmanned aviation, that policy binding almost was holding us back, and definitely was holding us back, because there was people and policies that were kind of set against the unmanned aspects of it. Now,
is that because of safety, or is that because of business?
Yes.
Yeah.
Both. And risk. The concept of risk.
Sure, right.
The old thing in aviation, the safest thing is not to fly. You don't fly the airplane, you'll be perfectly safe.
I feel that way about driving as well.
Yeah, exactly. Safest place for me to be with music is not to play.
I don't believe that.
But it was that idea. So, how do we manage the risk? And it was a business concern because there's an incredible amount of money invested in manned aviation. You can't perturbate that. You really can't. Right. Airlines, cargo, you name it. It's in there already. People are already invested. Don't screw with that.
Sure.
So there's a money aspect, a business piece, but there's also a safety piece that people maybe don't understand. How do we mitigate this risk? It's got to be a long process development of Here's the risk. Here's how to eliminate it. Here's how to mitigate it. Here's how to handle it. Okay, now it's acceptable. And that's how we've always done it in aviation. And in fact, the medical community now copied the aviation community doing it the same way, that same kind of thought process.
I think it's relatively similar in many fields. That Brian Jordan was on last week, and we spoke about standardization of processes that begin to stifle the development of other ideas. Maybe not even necessarily in a way where nobody's developing them. They're just not getting out there because it doesn't fit into the standard. And I think of, excuse me, art is the same way. We did talk about that, and whether or not you want to look at that as what somebody identifies as a period of art and things fit into that, or if you want to look at it as commercialization or top 40, these types of things where what's in place stifles or creates a hurdle, a giant hurdle in some cases, for the development of new ideas.
Yeah.
Even if it's even you have that in regard to the leadership and the, let's just call it the people who are managing it and creating it, but also the people who are learning about it or coming to you or coming to it or finding out about it. Sometimes if it doesn't fit into that standard, they don't want to engage it.
Yeah. And you're spot on in both what you were just saying. You really have to have that safe sandbox. And the sandbox you have of the jazz and innovation and the music style, that's a safe sandbox to go play in, that you're not bound in by policies and procedures, but you do have limits. And we have had conversations over roast chicken about this.
We got to do that. I hope we can do that soon.
In the music world and in the aviation world, business is a limiting factor. In the music world, you know much better than I, the business of music drives who gets to play, who doesn't get to play, where they get to play, the influences they have in a lot of ways. Who you select as your leaders in your community, whether it's the music community, the aviation community, the military community, the academic community, who you select and designate as your leaders matters a lot, because they will tend to drive things inward and controlled and processed, or keep things open and outward and open to the possibilities. So I think that leadership piece, again, where you started, plays a big role in music. Business is leading, except for when artists are recognized for the leadership of their art. So I think there's a lot of similarities across communities.
Absolutely.
Right, and I think that has to do what we were talking about in the beginning with mental, physical, and progress. Progress needs to move forward in a positive manner. The mental, it's much easier to move forward when you are communicating with people that are looking at and willing to interact with the same mental thoughts that you're trying to move forward. And then the physical is the actual outcome of that interaction. And that also takes place in the music that we're doing. You know, we have mental interaction along with the physical, and between the physical and the mental, we have what I consider a positive progress in the music. And that's basically what you're doing with the drones. It's all positive, and it's mental interaction of people who actually are trying to move forward and want to move forward, even though the controls of business may limit or limit for the moment, but they probably will break away a little bit eventually, because they'll figure out that, oh wow, we need to become part of this, because this is moving beyond where we just were.
Yeah, that alignment piece is huge, and that's really been a core, again, of my leadership studies, was getting the alignment. And alignment doesn't have to be ironclad. You're all in exactly the same lane, but you do have to have that direction, everybody focused in the same direction. And how you achieve that alignment, whether it's policy or more of a spiritual, people are just mano a mano, seeing the same things the same way. The one thing especially in a highly innovative environment, the one thing I really try to avoid doing is labeling things, period, but also especially labeling things as positive or negative. Because growth in any direction can be good. It's only until you see what's it really creating, and then you realize, okay, that's not aligned with where we're wanting to go, but let's keep that in a parking lot. Let's save that for later. Maybe that will be valuable. Or, it's just really not helping us. So, yeah.
I can identify with that. I think that touches on what I was saying before about when you're developing something and you're really not there yet. And some people, I think we have the tendency sometimes to say, okay, well, here's this thing that I'm thinking of, and I can't do it yet. I can't bring it into fruition, whatever that means. And maybe you're aware of that or maybe you're not. But the more aware of that you are, I think you will then accept that it's not ready yet. And you have to be able to have that space to where you go, okay, well, this thing is not, I can't shape it and have other people understand it yet. But I know that if I do, it will be something. And I feel like that is very much a process that I've been involved with as far as the drums and the guitar, especially the guitar, because the guitar is not my primary instrument. So when I first start trying to do some of this stuff, people look at you and you're like, no, you're not doing anything. And you're like, but I am. Man, I just need more time.
Yeah. I mean, some of the greatest techniques, some of the greatest artists, whether guitar, drums, any instrument, or outside of music, were totally misunderstood when they started and totally not encouraged, not brought into the center, nobody was trying to align with them, but they stayed at it. Hopefully they had some support, whether it's family, groups, business, whatever. They had support that allowed them to keep, doing what they wanted to do, vice what they should do.
Right. I think that fits in right with what you said. It's like you don't label it positive or negative. Yeah. And you have to. That way it's not seen as a worthwhile pursuit or not. Yeah. Because it could turn out to be very much worthwhile. Yeah.
One of my greatest ones musically, and it has affected me in many other ways, especially on the leadership side, because I was in the military. I do have that background, and that part of me in the core was Jimi Hendrix's National Anthem. When that came out, and I come from a very conservative family, when that came out, it was really not a popular version in my family. In my family, it was all veterans, East Coast, way back
What do they have to say about it?
Disrespectful, wasn't the way it was supposed to be, policy and procedures, but it was all the right notes with a lot of other notes, but it was viewed as being disrespectful, and wasn't the way it was supposed to be done. And I've heard versions that I didn't agree with, and I try to keep reminding myself, okay, there can be some freedom in there. But I heard that, and it resonated with me. I poorly played guitar and still poorly play. So the idea of a guitarist doing something like that with a known quantity and making it an unknown quantity and seeing where it would go, to me, resonated really deeply. And it started making me think about music differently, but also a lot of other things differently. Yeah, so cool. To this day, I still remember that song, but also remember that idea of when somebody does something different, don't discount it, don't label it right away. Think about it, let it resonate a little bit, see where it might fit.
That aligns with over here, this thing that says expanding what can be perceived, expanding what can be conceived. So it's really interesting that, because I say this a lot, like art doesn't have to play by those rules all the time. We don't have to worry about the drone routes and the this and that. And we have, even though there's a this and a that, and we won't label them, but I guess you can imagine what they might be. And the people, musicians, audiences, all the people that book the gigs and promote the gigs, they all have this supposed to stuff. And I think that so there is all that stuff there, but we have this ability to sort of not have dangerous repercussions for things that we're trying. So art can actually go out there and do that, and it's just nice. It's hearing you say that demonstrates that art can put on display what is possible before you realized it was possible. It can expand what you can perceive, and expand how you conceive and apply that to.
One of the biggest differences between the communities is that risk. What is risk? What is truly a risk in a specific community? In your world, the music world, the biggest risks are mostly commercial and support. Who's going to buy the music? Who's going to listen to the music? Who's going to fund the music? Contract, blah, blah, all that. It's mostly business. In my aviation world, and especially now with the unmanned world, risk is truly a physical risk. You have a safety risk. So they're recognizing what the risks truly are and how to handle those risks, mitigate, eliminate, whatever. That's really comes down to the key. Because for you to try to attract supporters, financial support, things like that, you have to know what your risks are and be able to quantify them and show them how you're going to either work around it, overcome it, whatever. Same thing with me when we're talking to an investor for UPD or investors in Mission Go, something like that. We have to be able to quantify the risk, programmatic risk, regulatory risk, financial risk, safety, physical safety risk, all those things, and be able to encapsulate those and say, here's how we're going to handle those, to be able to get them on board and say, yeah, I'll fund that, I'll support that, whatever. Same with the FAA. They operate on a safety case. That's pure and simple how they operate. So you have to be able to demonstrate for them, here's my safety case, here's why the way I want to do it is better than the way it's being done now, and here's how I'm taking care of all the risks.
Right.
And then they'll work with you. And that's how we've gotten the permissions we've gotten.
That's right.
Risk is good. Knowing about how to define it, quantify it is the key.
I guess I've never really thought about it like that before. I always end up, I think, thinking about how I'm going to overcome it. Like, or just knowing it. I just listed out, like, these are the things that stink about what we're doing.
It's kind of like, in a weird way, it's kind of like the veterans we work with. You know, we have our demons, some PTS groups that I work with. You have your demons. One of the phrases that the veterans use is make friends with your demon, because they're there.
Yeah.
Right.
Make friends with them.
Yeah.
Figure out how you can use your demons on your side, get the demons on your side. Risk is the same thing. How do you make risk your friend, and how do you use risk to further what you're doing and become friends with your risk? And it's, you want to eliminate, yes. And I understand all the engineering and policy and procedures about risk and things like that. But when you're in an innovative world and trying to push things, as you said, Paul, really trying to push the edge, being able to say, I recognize the risk, I embrace the risk, let's go forward together, risk, and figure out how we get this done to satisfy all the parties that need to be satisfied. But let's keep on going, keep on pushing.
How did how did that shape in your mind when you were younger and doing what you were doing and pursuing what you were pursuing? Was that something that you felt like was even in your mind?
Oh, it was definitely in my mind, but I mean, at the same time, I made a definite choice because I was offered at 16, I was offered actually more than one gig that paid very good money. In fact, they came to sign me at my house. And my father jumped into it, and he said, he's not going anywhere. And they were there, what? He just played with us. No, he's 16. He's not going anywhere. So that ended that one. But, however, another one did come along. And at that point in time, though, I had already made a decision after playing with Billy Taylor from Ellington's band, that I was going to play and develop what I considered at the time to be art in drumming. And that's what I chose to do. And that's what I did, and that left all of the other choices behind, and it has left them behind for 50-some years, I imagine. But, I mean, I got to play with some very talented people who basically taught me, and quite a few of them had made that exact same decision at a different point in time, and they made it to where they made it to, which is not at, the top of any financial chart. However, historically, they made it in their heart, number one. And number two, they are considered now to be some of the heaviest people that played. And they welcomed me into their world, so I feel honored about that. And I'm still playing what I play.
Yeah, the choices we make as individuals and as leaders, whether as leaders of ourselves or leaders of organizations, define not only the type of leader we're going to be, but the effect we're going to have on other people around us. So it was great that you had those people that you could role model with. That, and I try to be careful of enable, empower, allow, but they do all those things to support us, to become who we need to become or want to become or should become, some combination of those things. So all those things get wrapped into who we become. And the secret for me, or for most people, I think, is try to do it without any regrets. The choices you make define, and you could have gone those other paths and they would have ended up maybe somewhere else differently, financially, family-wise, career-wise, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But be happy and gratified with where you're at, but what else are you going to do? What's the next thing?
Right.
That's for me.
I think as we wind down here, when you say to be gratified by where you're at and the things that you're doing, but consider where you're going next, I say very often on here that I'm extremely grateful that we get to be here, and that this facility and Tommy and University of Maryland and the Navy are supporting this work, and that we get to speak with people that I had for a long time the belief that there was something specific about the struggle that I was enduring in the pursuit of music and art. And it's very clear to me, the more people that I speak to at TechPort that are involved with the military, that are involved with aviation and all sorts of varieties of engineering and different skills and backgrounds, that the struggles are all the same. They're dealing with them in certain ways. I think, like what Paul said, he kind of just made a decision and went that way regardless of the risk or whatever. And in a way, I think that's what I have done too, where it's just like you just kind of you accept that there's risk, but it's not so much that I try to address it. And I think that's something that I am starting to be able to perceive now from talking to everybody, which I think is exciting. So I am very grateful to be here in TechPort with you and Brian and Alec and Paul every week. It's a great place to be, and it's allowing those things to happen, not just for us, not just for music, but for UPD and Jordan R&D and other companies that come through here, and it's cool to see everybody and speak with everyone and get that perspective. And I hope that as the pandemic eases, that there can be more people here and we can shake more hands and have more conversations and get more things going on here in Southern Maryland and at TechPort. And
I would like to thank my wife, Jerry, who is working and not at home. And she is definitely supporting everything that I do.
Same here.
Yep. And she's a great poet. And like I say, she's an essential worker, and she's out there working.
We're actually going to be here with Jerry October 9th, 10th, and 11th. We are going to be recording a record in the hangar.
Awesome.
So we're going to video all of it. We're going to put out an album live at TechPort, and Jerry is an integral part of the Spirit of Innovation and Freedom, and we're excited to do that recording with her and here and get that out there. So come, I don't know, November, there might be a Spirit of Innovation and Freedom record, but also remember that every week on Tuesdays we record right here in TechPort, And we release that every Wednesday as a podcast on progressculture.org. And we also put out videos every Monday. There's music every Thursday. There's what you're watching right now, Progress Culture on Screen. And Fridays we have some of the music from these Progress Culture sessions. So we have lots of stuff going on Facebook and YouTube under Dominic Fragman in the Spirit of Innovation and Freedom. So please check that out. And we hope to see you again, many more agains. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Tom.
No, thank you, man.
It's always a pleasure. See you next time. Take care. Thank you all so much for being with us. We are grateful that you give us your consideration and attention. Please follow and reach out to the Spirit of Innovation and Freedom and TechPort on Facebook and YouTube, or at spiritinnovationfreedom.com and techportsomd.org, and also www.progressculture.org. Let us know what you're thinking and what you want to hear about and how you're feeling. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to see you again next week on Progress Culture. Thank you, much love, and see you soon.